says you're short?
Everyone.
I'm not short.
B-side STL. We're back. Coming in.
Good morning.
Some STL tunes right out of the gate. Spraying the infield. Many of you know I like that kind of Americana depressing stuff. Wallow in my booze and self-deprecation on the weekends requires Uncle Tupelo and stuff like that. But
Yes.
it's Friday, Anthony. Kind of in a good mood today. Woke up a little bouncy.
Did you?
I did a little bit.
Get out.
I did.
Bouncy in January, huh?
I know, really rare.
Hey.
Yeah.
You know.
11 degrees outside. I'm like, yay, let's go. So I did a little bit of quick peeking around, seeing who's got new music. I want to give a little shout out to St. Louis talent, and I noticed that actually a friend of mine is in this band as well. A band by the name of Middle Class Fashion, been around the Lou for a while. Got a new album out called With Affection, and 10 tracks on this thing. And what I like about it is the length of the whole album is like 30 minutes. And you know what it reminds me of? The old school Lemonheads,
Yeah.
where all the songs are like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because we were the original no attention span generation. So, alas, check it out if you are listening. You like it.
What was that? What was that album in late '90s, early 2000s? Was it the Strokes or like Pete Yorn or all those songs? They were all like 3-minute songs, and you just blow through the album. And
I think the Lemonheads were the kings at it because they had the album was It's a Shame About Ray. I believe it was 10 songs, but like 24 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's simple.
Get
math.
it in, get it done.
You're like, okay, there's not a story here. It's just melody.
3 minutes, yes.
It's quick.
Yeah.
And that's even including, I don't know, I don't think it was that album, the Mrs. Robinson cover.
Yeah, sure.
Right, where they took that song and made it half the length, but the same amount of words.
That was a thing, wasn't it? Was Structure, was that an 80s thing, or was that a...
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a little phase there.
Yeah. Or it was a formula.
We were booking, though, as Xers, right? Because you would have like 8-minute Stone Roses song, but then a 1:47 Lemonhead song.
Right.
And they were in this kind of the same rotation.
Right.
Which was like, I don't know, whatever. I don't know. That's a topic for a whole other podcast.
Probably with somebody who isn't me. Yeah. Maybe somebody sitting at this table. But
how things been for you, man? You've been
good.
I would be remiss if I did not talk about your Jerry Maguire moment.
Oh, little Jerry Maguire moment. Yes.
You did.
The grade in the window.
You did. The grade
threw it
in
down.
the window. For those of you listening, for those of you that know Anthony, obviously, I'm going to assume you probably saw his post, his article that he wrote, basically grading the city of St. Louis.
Yep.
And you sent it to me before you posted, and you're like, hey, check it out. Give it a read. I gave it a read. I'm like, hell yeah. Let's do this. And you're like, well, I don't know when to do it. And I'm like, put it out.
Gonna ruffle some feathers.
And I think at the end of the day, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes for today.
And for the record, not my grade. That's the grade that, I'm told we get. So from outsiders.
No, you don't have to be PC here. That was an accumulated response. But
it's true.
Take a second for the listener. Summarize the article, why, and kind of what you have, what the response has been, because I know your text string blew up.
Yeah.
I mean, people kind of know
all week,
that we've been doing this. I got text messages about, hey man, your boy Anthony's article, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Take a second to talk about the article, why you wrote it, and what the response was, and kind of a post-mortem of your own piece.
Sure.
What is there to learn from it?
Nobody in St. Louis puts themselves in the outsider's shoes. And so when we think about our city and we think about our town and we think about our perception, it's always from an internal perspective. But few people have the job that I have. So I'm on a front line really looking at reactions and seeing people's reactions from afar. So in the cities where they're thinking of coming in from, I'm seeing their reaction when they land at the airport. I'm seeing the reactions when they see St. Louis for the first time. And so I just thought that was an experience and a perspective that not a lot of people know, and that was important to be shared. And that if really the powers that be and a lot of the locals here truly understood how the separation of the city and the county and sort of our weird statistical, governmental, and structural anomalies are impacting their everyday lives, they would maybe view that issue very, very differently.
Well, my primary takeaway from the whole experience, the totality of what you did.
Yeah.
So there's the substance of the article.
Yeah.
But then there's the rollout, the social media, via LinkedIn and Facebook, et cetera. And I geek out on kind of the engagement.
Yeah.
What engagement looks like.
Yeah.
And so often in St. Louis, whenever somebody says anything that seems to be somewhat self-deprecating or,
Right.
Pointing a finger at our own misgivings, there's a ratio effect that, people just flood and be like, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. Yours was the exact opposite of being ratioed. You were, and where I want to go with this is you had stakeholders.
Yeah.
There were people commenting that were sharing, that were acknowledging a lot of the substance as real.
Yeah.
That frankly have their, that have keys to the car.
Yeah.
that are part of some of these things that are occurring.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel? And, what did you think whenever you did see, and again, I know you got some private messages as well from additional stakeholders.
Sure.
What are you hearing from them?
It's hard to capture. I think it's really, one of the things that I wanted to be sure to say was that, I love St. Louis. I love St. Louis in my bones. And that once people are here and once they see it, it's phenomenal. However, the losses, the people that don't even get that chance, the number of people that aren't even getting on the planes and even giving us a look, the losses are incalculable. And so St. Louisans really have a choice to make. Do we want to grow or not? And do we want to be found or not? And that really is the question. So we keep the image the way that it is. Is it something that we're doing intentionally and that we do on purpose? Or are we doing it just because it's an oversight or we're naive? Neither one are great. But I do want to raise the issue and that the everyday St. Louisan needs to understand this is a major reason why there aren't people on the sidewalks, why a lot of the restaurants are closing, why the schools are getting smaller, the congregations, everything. So when I moved back from DC, I moved to St. Louis in part because it wasn't a clusterfuck. It wasn't a total crowded, oversaturated mess. However, we could use a few 100,000 more people, and we're not doing a single thing and not taking any steps right now to see that happens in any kind of real measure. I probably help bring in, if you want to think about this, I bring in maybe 100 families a year, and 150 a day move to Charlotte a day.
Yeah.
Or
So
to
you're
Nashville or to Atlanta or to Denver. And so we need to think about, do you want any kind of growth? Because we're in a demographic winter.
So you're saying the math isn't mathing?
The math is not mathing. And, this is a legacy economy. This is an economy where it's a lot of very, very old money.
Yeah.
And then you've got, do some powers that be, want it to want to expand and start to take those, or do they want sort of control of their fiefdoms? And there's a lot of investment, I think, in stuff and things in St. Louis, but when it comes to investing into a pipeline and investing into people, that's a very, very different conversation. And so unless you do what we do in the relocation world, I just don't think a lot of St. Louisans it even occurs to them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't occur to them. They're thinking about ordinances and snow plows and basic city services, which is fine, but they're not seeing how all of the redundancies and individual fiefdoms within the city, how that looks to somebody from London or somebody from Brazil or somebody from Germany, particularly from a company that's thinking about moving hundreds of lives here.
Well, I mean, it matters to a rural kid from Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah. In your world, it's easy to look at the elevated status of your clientele and where they're coming from, et cetera, to connect to these elevated institutions.
Yep.
But we're missing it on, no offense, but we're missing it on the bottom rung as well.
Yeah.
So what a segue. Perfect segue, because I've been watching the body language of our guest here, kind of doing this like...
She would have one or two things to say.
Yeah. I'm gonna assume she read the article as well. If not, she has homework, and as an educator, she'll understand. Go ahead, introduce
Probably
our guest.
not, but I had the opportunity to work with our guest. When did we work together? Was it probably a year ago?
It was in March.
It was in March, yeah, so almost a year ago. And we I know we had Zamir Gata on a couple months ago, but when I was riding around with you, I felt like gosh, I feel like I'm in the presence of of Anthony Bourdain. Like we were going around St. Louis. I think you got in at 5 a.m. or 4, and 12 hours later, you were still just so interested in the city and so interested in all the different pockets and the music and the culture. And I don't know. I like to joke, if things don't work out at the school, hopefully I'd have the chance to work with you. So Heather Carreiro, thank you for joining us today. And welcome.
Thank you both so much for having me.
So, gotta ask, you heard our intro. We spent a good amount of time recapping. And if you want to blink twice, if the answer is no, did you get a chance to read the grade article?
I read about half of it. It was really long.
It's a little long. Brevity was not my long suit.
I did read some of the comments too, though. Yeah.
So initial, I would love to get just your initial reaction.
And that is sort of what you do too. So I'm very interested.
Yeah, I would love to get your initial reaction though. Listening to us kind of recap, the fallout from the Jerry Maguire moment. And then, reading a little bit and actually being one of those individuals that has gone through, the fiery gates and, the initial impressions, et cetera. When you think about the concept and the theme of the article and, and more broadly through your own experience, does that relate? Do they connect with your own experience?
Yeah, I would say, Anthony and I actually talked a lot about this when I was looking at the city and able to get to know a little bit more about it. And I would say that my background is actually quite different from a lot of people who are potentially considering moving to St. Louis. I finished my bachelor's degree and flew straight to Pakistan on a one-way ticket. And so I am a risk taker. I'm someone who was looking through every single country in the world and every city and thinking about where do I want to live and what kind of job do I want to have? What kind of impact can I have? And so after spending 15 years overseas, mostly in Asia, when I was thinking about moving back to the United States, originally I landed in California. And then after that, I was really thinking, okay, where do I want to be long term? What kind of things am I looking for? And had this massive spreadsheet, kind of about, it had all these different categories of life, and things that I would want to have in my job and in my life. And, I didn't necessarily know that St. Louis would end up fitting a lot of the things in that rubric.
Sure.
Just because I didn't know enough about it. But as someone who has lived overseas in so many different countries, and is originally from Massachusetts, I looked at everywhere I could possibly move in the U.S., as its own little mini country, right? Like a place that I could learn about, explore, and I didn't want to necessarily let any of that bad press or kind of these surface level things affect my opinion because, I've lived places that people go, oh my gosh, wow, you lived in Pakistan, you lived in South Korea, you lived in Vietnam, you lived in India, and some of the places I have traveled as well are on people's kind of no-go list.
So
there was no fear of like, oh, I'm going to.
Karachi isn't on everyone's bucket list.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So when you did come back domestically and you were ready to kind of like, pick your domestic haven or whatever you want to call it, your next home, at what point, because if you had a list, was the list kind of your own personal arbitrary list? Was it provided by somebody else? And how did St. Louis make, even the mid list, let alone the short list, to land you here?
Okay, it was definitely my own list. There's a spreadsheet, there's a rubric about things I was looking for in life. And, when I ended up choosing to move to Santa Barbara, California, I really prioritized like things on that list which were the opposite of being in a mega city in Asia, because I was coming from cities of 20 million people. And so I was very much like, I want mountains and horses and beaches and, ability to go backpacking and trekking. And after living in a place where I did have that every single day, I was like, oh, I want this for vacation, but I still want to really live in a city. And so when I looked back at that, I called it my job life rubric, just reprioritizing. I have an MBA in business analytics, so everything was like weighted. There were visualizations of the data, and I recognized really what I wanted was accessible urbanism. And so I just started looking into some different factors. I'm a musician. I love music. I love art. I love food from different countries, diversity in population. So I had all of these things into my rubric, and things like being close to the beach like went a little lower because I realized, I actually. Yeah. When I go to the beach, I don't do very much. I would
Go
rather.
You realize I don't like sand in my shoes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a water skier. I love getting out and being in water. But I was like, I actually just want to go to a punk show on a Friday night. You know, so.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Amen. Well, no, that's interesting though, because it's once you sort of have that experience of the vacation all the time, you realize maybe it's something that's a weekend thing, but. I do think that profile is important, that a lot of people just don't even know that somewhere like St. Louis could start to fit some of those other things. And so as you were sort of doing those analytics, did anything before you came to visit pop up in that regard, like in terms of music, in terms of vibe, in terms of grid, in terms of culture? Or was it sort of a blank slate?
Yeah. Okay. What was interesting is I started following a YouTube channel called The City Nerd by Ray Delham.
Yeah, that's such a good one.
And St. Louis kept getting, number 1 and number 2 rankings when he was really talking about affordable urbanism.
Yeah.
And just like, I kind of latched onto that term and I was like, that's what I'm missing here. I'm in this beautiful wine country. I've got horses out my window, but I don't have affordable urbanism. I mean, I would drive to LA, 2.5 hours, like over a mountain on the highway to go to a show or go to an exhibition. And I said, I need to live somewhere where I can do that. And also, I don't want it to be like when I lived in Mumbai or Seoul, where it's 2 hours driving in each direction. So I want affordable, accessible, urban activities to do.
So it's funny you use the term affordable because that is it's almost like potato debate in the universe only here in St. Louis. There are those that say, we want to avoid the moniker of cheap. We don't want to use the term affordable too much. We need to focus on growth and upward mobility and economic opportunity. When you hear that kind of pushback, can you just take a second and talk about, how you view the term affordable, through the lens of what you're describing here, affordable urbanism, and and how important that is to you? Do you see it as a potential detriment for a region that is trying to attract new individuals? How would you frame that from a brand perspective, the term affordable in particular?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because as someone who has really looked at this on a global scale, I always would check every year, like the international cities I was interested in looking in and what was the cost of living index, and kind of thought, oh, well, maybe I don't want to live in Singapore, right? Because everything is going to be more expensive. And as a single parent, it just limits what you can do. Even if you have a great job, great salary, benefits, you are deciding, do I want to rent the 2-bedroom apartment or versus the 4-bedroom house, So there's a big difference when you think about that cost of living index. And so to me, it's about the scope and the scale of what you can do on whatever you make, right?
Yeah.
And so I lived in Santa Barbara County right before this, and then before that in Seoul, 2 of the most expensive places to live in the world. And
Literally.
yeah, absolutely. According to any index, those, and I had gone from places which come extremely low on that list, like Mumbai, India, and Lahore, Pakistan, and then somewhere kind of in the middle, Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And so it's all relative. And I think for me, I think of affordable meaning like, okay, I don't necessarily have to choose between these 5 different activities that I want to do, right? Whereas in California, I'm like, okay, here's these 5 things. I can go to one of them, based on, what I'm making here in California. And, part of this job search, I actually was chosen as a finalist for a role in Santa Barbara County. I will say the salary was about 250%, right?
Wow.
But the cost of living in Santa Barbara compared to
4x,
here
yeah.
was even more than that. And so at some point, the salary doesn't matter, right? You have to think about what your life is going to look like on that. And then what is the quality of what you're getting, when it comes to things like activities you can do, even like private school tuition and things like that. There's just a huge differential depending on where you live. And a lower cost doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is not as good. I lived in India, I had the best trips, and those were definitely the cheapest trips that I've ever had. I'm staying in a turret of a castle, for $40 a night.
So some people think when they think low, they think cheaper or lower cost. They think that the amenities, the quality goes down, but that's not necessarily always the case. Interesting. And then do you think of it, do you think of affordability also in terms of the logistics? You mentioned a little bit on the accessibility and the time. Is that kind of part of the alchemy and part of the formula as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you think about like commute times.
Yeah, sure. Or even just getting to the fun stuff that you want to do.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. So my daughter and I have been here now since July. So, we're full semester in, and we still get really excited to be like, wow, the post office is 5 minutes away. Right. There's this awesome Chinese restaurant 3 minutes away.
Yeah.
Because where we were living before, it was 45 minutes
rural
to go anywhere, just to get
beautiful,
beautiful, but 45 minutes to go to Costco or Target. You planned your whole weekend around errands, and we don't need to do that now. My daughter's dance class is 2 minutes from Trader Joe's, and Trader Joe's had its own category in my life job rubric, so it was very important, and that makes me so excited, and I think that improves your quality of life.
You just have to navigate the Target and Trader Joe's parking lot, but getting to the parking lot is easy.
Which is totally fine. It is way better than like a 12-level parking garage in Korea. So I don't mind it. But I think that just improves my quality of life so much. And I think about, because when I was thinking about compared to, say, a larger metro area, I went and visited some, had finalist visits for some roles, and thought, wow, my commute is going to be 45 to 50 minutes or more every day in traffic, depending on the area where the school is versus the area where I could rent or buy a home.
Each way.
Yeah. And, now my commute is 17 minutes, which is like a long one, for people where I work.
Now, you're an explorer, and you're an adventurer, and you're one of those people, you're making the lists. Professionally, personally, everything. Do you think that, and I just thought, a city like St. Louis, do middle market cities like St. Louis that are under the radar, that don't really unfold or unroll quickly? If you land in San Diego, it's like, bam, or even Pittsburgh, bam, or so many other places, DC. And here it's like, it's all, you gotta uncover it. And there's some people that really find joy in that and think that, oh, that's kind of punk rock. I mean, that's kind of fun, sort of being first or being early or discovering it before other people have. Has that sort of been, do you think that somebody without your disposition would have an easy of a time, in St. Louis, or do you think it's something that's a possibility for everybody?
I think there's a mix of experiences available.
Yeah.
So, I'm someone who, like, when I lived in Vietnam, I would always be really excited about someone being like, oh, there's this cafe. It's on the 4th floor down an alleyway. You got to pass the cat shop and then you're going to find it, right?
Yeah.
And so I love kind of finding those little things.
Yeah.
But I think in St. Louis, like, you do have those kind of experiences where,
Yeah.
you need to know someone, or, you somehow pops up in your Facebook algorithm and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
But then there are also so many things which are just overtly available and easy to find,
Interesting.
So I think you can have whatever level of experience you want as far as being able to find stuff and do stuff. I mean, honestly, it's like every weekend I've got 6 things on my calendar that I want to go to. You know? And those are just from being present online, just talking to people, knowing what's going on.
Are you pleasantly surprised, or were you expecting to be given, based on, you did your homework. you have a spreadsheet, right? Are you surprised by the actual amount of flexibility and options, and you had this mathematical equation in your head, you put it on paper, and you're like, this is how I want this to work for my life. Is 2 + 2 equaling 4 in your lived experience so far here?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that some other places where I have used this rubric 6 months in or a year, and I kind of reevaluate and go, oh, that wasn't as good as I thought it would be, right? But with St. Louis, I'm finding it's actually better, than I had expected. And that's because I had never visited here before, right? So I came for my 3 days, for my job interview and to see the city, and that was it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I kind of made my ratings based on that, based on what I had been reading.
Yeah.
And what I found is that it's underrated, right? And like what I could find. And then what my experience is honestally so much better. I'm like raving about St. Louis.
Undersold and over-delivered.
Yes.
Wow. All right.
So one more quick question, then we're going to take a quick break.
We don't do that often.
Is this formula patented, and would you license it to acclimate.city?
I don't know if everyone's going to put the same weight on things like punk rock or red, which
We'll
is
just have
another category.
let's just create a drop-down menu, genre, and your favorite carb. And mix those up. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. B-side STL. We are talking to Heather Carreiro. Got that right.
You got it.
All those silent vowels in there.
Yeah.
Nailed it, JB. When we come back, we're going to talk more about landing at the school that you were at and really dig into how the rubric is working kind of in a, the surprises, what are some early on favorites, things like that, that are really standing out to you. So be right back. Anthony, myself, and our guest. Thanks for listening. Like, review, follow, share. 2 seconds. Okay, we're back. Told you, quick break. As I mentioned just a second ago, we've been talking about your process, your formula, your kind of your frames of reference, in the Far East, in Asia, on the West Coast. But you landed here, obviously. You're on the show. Where did you land? Take a second, talk about your employer, where you're at, and early impressions of the school, etc.
Absolutely. All right. So I came here to take a position as Director of Enrollment Management at the Whitfield School, which is a school for grades 6 through 12 out in Creve Coeur, and we have 420 students. So it's a mid-sized school, all secondary kids, and it has a real focus on experiential, hands-on learning, which is something that has just been a thread, throughout my career. And so when I learned about the school through a recruiter I was working with, just learned about how much they integrate that real project-focused learning, and like students are doing so much outside of the classroom, just as much as they are in the classroom. And what I also saw in the school was a really diverse and welcoming population, which, of course, I'm going to see that when I come for my tour, for my job interview, but it has definitely held true for both me and my daughter. And, what's interesting is it's also a place that integrates a lot of research-based positive psychology for students' character development, which is something that I've been very involved in previous schools, implementing programs like that, really thinking about how do we help kids holistically learn how to flourish and how to thrive. And so that's the kind of school that I was looking at, a school that did that, a school that focused on building intercultural and global competence. And I didn't know if I was going to find it outside of international schools. So it was very surprising to find that, at a school that I had never heard of, a smaller school here in the Midwest. But yeah, it's been really awesome coming in and getting to know people.
And given your MBA, your work in analytics, all the things, I mean, you could have gone to work at McKinsey. You could have gone to work at, why independent schools? How did that sort of
experiential independent schools?
Yeah, experiential independent schools.
Well, okay. I mean, honestly, I have looked at kind of those other career paths as well, like whether it's corporate or consulting. And you spend a long time thinking about potentially moving to LA for that type of work. But to be honest, right now in this economy, that work is not as exciting as being in a school. Being in a school is really exciting and it's really fun. And part of my career,
front line of really changing, evolving things,
changing culture. And I think, I was preparing for all those kind of interviews and doing casing and all of that, and then I thought, but I just love being in a school, and I have had so much experience both as a teacher, as a deputy head of school, a curriculum director, as the person who kind of leads international trips and helps students do all of that stuff. And I thought I'd really miss this dynamic energy of having those young people in my life.
Sure.
And so this was a sweet spot of being able to be in a school, but also bring those MBA skills into the role in the school, which is focused on generating revenue and, really building the branding along with our director of marketing, partnering with her. So it's a pretty exciting way to use it.
I've got a unique take on that because my kids, all three of my kids, to some degree, attended the college school in Webster Groves, which is a pre-K through middle school. So it's not a secondary school, experiential school. And we put them in there, and early on, my wife's like, well, they're going to have 42 field trips this year. And I'm like, 40 what? I'm like, trying to, wrap my head around, the
look at the blackboard and suffer.
Yeah, the expectation of a, quote, traditional education. And follow me here, because I think there's something to this that a lot of people just don't understand about the region. So we have a school like the college school, obviously the Whitfield school. And you said something earlier where you were talking about accessible urbanism, but you still wanted to be able to go hike, that you wanted to see scenery, right? You talk about the mountains. Well, you like water skiing. Well, there's lakes all over the place here. There's rivers, etc. And I think that's one of the things here in our region that for a family that wants an alternative experience, that is in a world where traditional education is under fire, not because it's not doing a good job, but because the modern day workplace and skill sets are a little bit different, right? And experiential schools do tend to lean into gardening and all these other things that it's like a form of a trade school to a degree. Do you see that rubric or the Venn diagram of all these things overlapping to where St. Louis has a competitive advantage with institutions like your school, with our geographical background, with our kind of emphasis on private schools, frankly, education here, but still being affordable and accessible?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have to say, one of my favorite memories of visiting the elementary schools here was when I showed up at the college school and there was 20 canoes right outside filling the whole parking lot. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Did you know we were sponsored by granola?
Yeah. The old
That was the
VW,
mascot.
the old VW, the old hippie buses everywhere. And,
Oh
yeah.
my God, Tava. Yeah, Tava, toe straps and granola.
Yeah,
That was our
yeah.
mascot. Anyway,
Well, so yeah, I think there's kind of like two parts to that question. One about like just outdoors being accessible. I'll say I came here without any kayaks. I now have 3. I have like a fleet of inflatable kayaks because
Yes.
I just
Floating.
found
Yes.
it so easy, to get out. It's just different levels of difficulty, and it's really easy to get out with family, with kids. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, even into October, we were out swimming.
it's so funny. You're so St. Louis, and you have 3 kayaks. You said you have you and your daughter, so the third one is for the cooler.
Well, no, the kayaks each fit 2 people because you got to bring friends.
Oh, there we go. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're one.
I
You're one
digress.
of us now.
Yeah, we got that. And I did buy all of them on Facebook Marketplace as well. So
Amazing.
Well, so let me
love it.
Yeah, let me kind of test this a little bit further, kind of clarifying, because there were a lot of thoughts in my head and wanting to try and connect the dots here. Hypothetically, if you did have a little bit of a say, if you had the keys to the car from a brand or a marketing standpoint or a messaging standpoint, how would you speak to other markets, other families in particular, that are trying to figure out, they need to move. They're looking for a relocation. St. Louis might be on their list of 50. Can you speak to, this world of options and accessibility that are both green space, wet space, as well as urban space? Is that something? How would you sell that?
yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like I haven't even discovered a tiny bit of what there is to do. There seems to be so many things that you can do, whether that's getting out, rock climbing, all the different kinds of paddling you can do, getting out in lakes, water sports, like all of those are here and within a drive, like
Yeah.
able to wake up in the morning, drive an hour and a half, kayak for 6 hours, drive back. Like that's an awesome day trip.
Yeah.
In a lot of large metro areas, like your drive to get
That's a
out to
4-day
these places
weekend.
is
Yeah.
so long.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
it
10 hours.
and it's the same thing with like getting out for like festivals, arts, culture. There's different things happening all over the city all the time. So I feel like for families who want those things to be like more integrated in their lives and have the option to go and do them regularly, not only when you get that 3 or 4 day weekend, you can do it here, from St. Louis.
Do you think that I guess the question is, if you look at the independent schools, for example, so we've got 300 independent private day schools, then you've got all the parochial schools, and then you've got 10 incredibly strong public school districts that are also in the running nationally. If you take education and then you just take outdoor life, why do you think that is, or in your as a somebody who's looking at that from the outside in, or as an outsider initially a year ago as you were looking in, why do you think that isn't the foot forward that we lead with in St. Louis, and that it's still a lot of the same old, like it's still the Arch and it's still the zoo, God bless them, and all of those things that are great, but like what do you think there's some kind of reticence that we don't promote some of those softer but very impactful things about our culture that I think would really be an attraction coup if they were front and center more often? Why do you think that those are sort of kept hidden, or do they not really know what they have? Because it's always like you grew up here, so it's just that parks, national parks of that level are just 20 minutes away. What is that, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it kind of boggles my mind that St. Louis is not, marketing these things.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when it comes to the strength of the independent schools.
I mean, it's wild.
It's actually crazy because.
Like, why isn't that the number
Right.
one? Like way before the Arch or the Cardinals.
Well, I
Like,
wonder if we think only about tourists and not people who want
Yeah.
to relocate, right?
Right.
And what we need is people who are going to relocate.
Right. But if the tourists saw those schools, like those schools should be on the tour. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, come here for a convention and stop by Villa or MICDS or JBS or Whitfield or to any of those things. I mean, God, and then you start getting into the elementary schools. I mean, I remember taking people on even the public school, the public school tours, and they were looking at, Reed School or, they were looking at Glen Ridge and Clay, some of the other things. And they go, Anthony, I asked you to show us public schools, out of frustration. And I go, these are public schools. And they're like, wait, what? And they just don't even think to look.
Yeah, wait till they say Ladue High, right?
Right. I mean, so, they're worried that their
do it
kids,
as an architecture tour.
their kid that they're worried that their kids aren't even going to be able to read anymore if they move to St. Louis, let alone have to, have all of these wonderful options. So,
yeah, it's so interesting. So, another thing that I do as a volunteer, as part of being an education leader, is I go on accreditation teams for the Council of International Schools.
Sure.
And I sometimes lead those teams as well. So that would be like every school in a 5-year cycle, they bring in a team of, 8 to 15 educators, and we are looking at everything those schools are doing. And, I've been able to go to top international schools, right, and see the pedagogy, the way they're teaching, the programming. And so I came here, to St. Louis and not knowing the schools. As a director of enrollment at a secondary school, my first order of priority was I got to get out and see all the elementary schools where our kids are coming from, these private feeder schools, so to say.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going around every week. I'm hitting 1 or 2 schools. And I am just blown away by the level of teaching, how modern it is. This is the level of top international schools, but you've got huge cluster here in St. Louis of these schools. And I haven't seen anything like that aside from like these large metro areas like New York, New Jersey. You've got the Bay Area, you've got DC. You have that kind of concentration of really excellent schools, especially elementary schools in those areas, because those are the ones that I've been visiting.
Sure.
And I'm going to, and I just keep waiting for a dud,
Yeah.
There is not one in the mix, I mean, all of them were just amazing. All of them, I thought, wow, if my kids were young, I'd want to send them here.
Yeah.
And I'd go to a school the next day and go, oh, I'd want to send them here.
I mean, I would put it up against anywhere in the world for that.
Oh, and usually
But
you
it's
only
still-
find 1 or 2 schools of that level.
But
We
it's-
have dozens.
And we have dozens of them. So I guess, is it just we're spoiled, or that it's just that kind of perspective, or
Yeah,
maybe
that's
something that needs to change, or is it something that St. Louisans, I know that from kindergarten, just the whole history, it's just not something that I have yet to bring somebody to St. Louis where they're not just overwhelmingly surprised when they see, not only do they have one option, they've got 8, and they're all, magnificent, and they're all New York level, so, or, wherever in the world. So,
So
I'm
I
interested you're finding the same thing.
We need, it's like as a city, St. Louis needs to do something, right, to brand that this is such a great place for families to come, because you have all of these options for excellent schools, whether that's a public school, private school, parochial. You've got all these schools. You have these outdoor access. You've got any kind of restaurant, you can imagine. And it's just like kind of unending.
Have you had or been having maybe conversations, friendly conversations, text strings, et cetera, with some previous associates or work friends from other markets? Because I'm certain a lot of them. My question is this: 2 parts. One, when you did decide that St. Louis and this particular school was kind of top of mind, you were going there. Number one, what was the reaction whenever they heard you were considering a St. Louis school? And number 2, now, 1B of this question is, now that you're here, what does that conversation look like between them when it comes to describing what you're experiencing? Are they surprised? Are they...
nationally, when you're at the convention, what kind of reaction do you get?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone out yet to a convention. But when I told people that I was moving to St. Louis, there was just kind of a blank expression. Like there was, like people didn't know how to respond or place it, right?
Yeah.
Like if I had said, I'm moving to San Diego, everyone would go, oh, wow, I'm going to come visit you.
Sure.
You know, and there would be
Yeah.
like, even when I was moving from Korea to Santa Barbara County, people were like, sign me up. I'm coming for the summer.
Yeah,
You know?
sure.
And I tell people, I'm moving to St. Louis. And they're just like, oh,
They're not
okay.
lining up.
Yeah, they haven't lined up yet. And I am just sending people pictures.
What an interesting choice.
But, now that I'm here, right, and I'm sending people, hey, here's my house. I have a pool,
Yeah.
And, and it's like I'm still in a, area where I'm close to downtown and,
Yeah.
Have all this outdoor access and everything. Everyone's like, oh, wow, that, what? And then they're like, send
Yeah.
me more pictures. So I think there's just like this dearth of knowledge, right? Like people don't know what to expect. The only people who had anything to say had actually come for the People of Color Conference, which is a conference with National Association of Independent Schools. And they had come for that a few years ago, which was based in St. Louis. And they all raved about the conference and the different, the ways the city represented itself through art and music. Whitfield's Trash Can Band was there. So that apparently
Tremendous.
people remembered that. They're like, you're going to the school with the Trash Can Band. And I was like, I guess
Tremendous.
so. So that is the only thing that clicked for fellow educators,
Yeah.
which I think it makes sense that St. Louis is known for its diversity, but we need to be known for the other things as well.
Yeah.
I
My favorite thing, and this is not a plug, but it sort of is.
When you say this is not a plug.
Yeah, then I'm in
Like, what's
trouble.
the plug?
Yeah, it's like I'm not crazy. Yeah, so it's whenever we have guides at Acclimate, so you need to pick up somebody. You need to pick up a perfect stranger. Spend 7-8 hours with them, meals, get to know them, families, and people from all walks of life, international, domestic, rural, urban, cosmopolitan, all different backgrounds, anything. Just very randomly, our best guides always graduated from Whitfield. There was something about Whitfield that like they could just get along with every socioeconomic, like every kind of background, every kind of person, whether they were an athlete or whether they were an artist or whether they were, whatever it might be, very studious. They all got along, and it was just like and it just happened very, very randomly. So there's something going on very right there. And I don't know. I think that the commodity of St. Louis in so many ways are the kids. It's the kids. And the kids that are going to these schools and going to these places, and we are almost exporting them to the world. And interestingly, it's important to look at how do we maybe think about, why would they come back or if they would want to come back. But it is it's our greatest export.
Well, that's a great. This has been percolating in my brain here for a second, and I think you just opened the door for me. Do you think that part of the reason why we are an export market when it comes to our young talent, et cetera, do you think it is because it's almost too easy? And what I mean by that is like some 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, they want some grit, they want some fireworks, right? They want this idea of bright lights, big city, or, mobility or upward mobility. And yet, you describing your experience and what you're finding is that it's really the ease. It's the lack of traffic. It's the accessibility of a store like Trader Joe's. You can go to Trader Joe's, get your sandwich.
It's not valued because it's not hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's no struggle, right?
Yeah.
Are you kind of seeing that in real time?
We
as
all
far
want to
as-
struggle a little bit. We want to be on the
We-
struggle
yeah, we
bus
wanna,
in our
like,
early 20s.
This needs to be harder.
Yeah.
It's too good, right? Is there a little bit of that, or are we lying to ourselves, trying to convince ourselves that it is that good?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, at least I know for our students who are graduating, it seems like the independent school and specifically Whitfield has really cultivated this desire to go and see the world. So I don't know if it's so much of like wanting challenge, but just like recognizing like, oh, what's out there? Like this year we started an exchange program with the Hakuba International School in Japan. And so now we've got kids all being like, we want to go spend a semester in Japan, which was never on their radar before. And so more and more we're seeing students even want to apply to go to university abroad. And I think Whitfield and other independent schools are like fostering that sense of adventure, and wanting to go out. So maybe not so much that they want to struggle, but that they're like ready and equipped to go out. And then, probably they'll come back when they realize, we might want that ease again.
Do you look at that data? Do you get to see that data? I'm just curious. There's some schools, like my high school, I went to a public high school, nobody came back. I mean, my classes, the overwhelming vast majority is gone. Whereas in some schools, the culture is you do end up moving back to St. Louis. Have you seen that at all? Do you gauge that at all? Not just Whitfield in particular.
I would say
CBC.
Yeah.
We have our director of alumni relations, Laura Lotz.
Yeah.
She really has her finger on the pulse of
She
all of
looks
it.
at that? That would be
Absolutely.
fascinating to know. Yeah.
Yeah, because they host alumni events like.
What schools have a culture of you move back to St. Louis, and others it's cool to fly away.
Yeah, I think our kids, they do both.
I do too. Yeah, you're definitely a mix.
So,
for sure.
So last question on the school, and then I want to get into some of the culture finds and experiences. But you've been there now for a little over a semester. You're really kind of digging in. Gut reaction. Do you think, if you had to describe the secret sauce along the lines of what is actually resulting in these kids thriving, if you had to pin it down to maybe one or two things, what do you think is the secret sauce at Whitfield in particular, but maybe the educational community at large here in the market? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's really understanding that you need to have this core of, challenging, rigorous college prep academics, but that's not everything, right? That it's about helping kids understand who they are and find their identity and creating a safe, welcoming space for them to do that. And also being really intentional with creating curriculum about, learning about what is ethical citizenship, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to have cultural competence? And more, we're seeing that across schools.
What's your life outside the classroom?
Build that. Yeah. And parents want it too.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the parents that I'm talking to, we do family interviews for all of our applicants. So we talk to the student for about 30 minutes and the parents or caregivers for 30 minutes. And, that's what parents really want, is this holistic education for their kids. They want them to thrive. It's less and less parents coming in, with fifth grade saying, I want my kid to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, and more of like, I want my kid to be happy. I want them to love learning. I want them to have this sense of curiosity and adventure in their learning.
Sure.
And we don't care what they're going to do, like we want them to be in a place where they can be that, or they can become an artist or the engineer or an athlete or whatever they're going to become. So I think I think having so many parents in that St. Louis community who want that, then that creates that cycle then of schools, creating programming to support that, and then it just builds on each other.
I love it. Here's what we're going to do real quick. We are going to take another break. When we come back, as I alluded to, let's dig into, not that education isn't fun, but let's get into the fun stuff. Food, drink, rock and roll, punk rock, apparently, right? And also thrifting.
Absolutely.
Sound like fun? All right.
All my favorite things.
There we go. We'll be right back after this. Okay. We're back. Quick one. Magic of post-production.
In the attendance, is the attendance in terms of population, in terms of a city our size, do we have too many schools? Are there too many options? Are we having enough? Do we need what do the independent schools of St. Louis need?
Well, I would say those of us who are in charge of admissions, we definitely feel the market is crowded.
Yeah,
there are so many options.
Yeah. So I would love to see a way, where we get all of the schools on the same page, not so much going after the St. Louisans, for example, but there is this whole cohort out there in the world and in the country. And, I just, as I like to say, I'm just trying to get them on the plane. Yep. And then, and then which school they go to or which neighborhood they live in after they're here, but I do think we could take a lot more. So I was just curious where where things stand or what you're seeing out in the community and in the ecosystem. Could we use more?
Yeah, and I think we could use more international diversity because we don't
Really?
have we do have some boarding programs, but not a lot. And so at Whitfield, we have a homestay program, and I'm developing that to work with a third-party provider and really try to bring in more kids from other countries as well.
Yeah.
Because I know how much value that brings to a school and a community. And I think like becoming known as a destination for that would be awesome, right? Because right now I have to start my first 3 slides of like, here's the U.S. Okay, here's where St. Louis is. Here's where the school is.
Exactly.
And I'm having these webinars.
You and me both.
And
Exactly.
trying to advertise our summer camp program. And we're actually going to have our summer camp program. Like we're going to just have them fly into Chicago, spend a few days there, come here, and then go there because we can market Chicago better than fly into St. Louis. But
Amazing.
if we can get them there, then we can get them to St. Louis. We can get them to Whitfield.
So we have Chaminade. We have Thomas Jefferson School has some boarding.
Prior.
Principia, maybe.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And then so if they have international students, do they stay with families at the day schools right now?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so you're
some
looking
day
to maybe
schools will
build that.
have
That
a
would be very
homestay
cool.
program. We have a very limited one right now, but just trying to build that up and have more of an on-the-ground network to support the kids.
Yeah.
So.
Well, once it takes off in a particular country or a particular area, it could become a thing. Whitfield might become a thing.
I know.
Some of the countries around the world. That's
Just got to
very,
get them to
very
know
cool.
about us.
Yeah.
So let's.
I like that idea.
Let's shift into a little bit of the rock and roll side of the move. I'm going back to your words earlier, accessible urbanism. I love that, by the way. I think it's cool. I've heard it before, but you said it really well. And before we jumped on the mics earlier, we were talking a little bit about some of the things you're into, music being one of them. You even mentioned, in your research, looking for a place that has somewhat of a relevant cultural scene. I don't know where you stand or what your priorities are when it comes to being a foodie. Can you take a second and maybe just run through, the cultural grade, 5-6 months in here, as far as kind of adding up both the food scene, your own entertainment, be it music or theater or whatever you're into, and the vibe within the neighborhoods. How would you grade St. Louis at this point?
Oh, okay. That's a great. I feel like I could talk about this all day. So buckle up.
We got plenty of time.
But I mean, as far as music, so for me, I'm a musician, have been since I was a teenager. I play electric bass, a little bit of guitar, I sing. My main genres that I like are ska and punk, but I just love all other kinds of, genres as well. So, when I was thinking about, again, my spreadsheet, I was like, I want a place that's going to have the big arena tours, but I also want these small, clubs, which are what I grew up with on the East Coast, like all these little tiny clubs where I went to see my favorite ska bands and punk bands and up and coming, local bands and things like that. Somewhere where I might actually be able to start a band and play in it, as well. So kind of that whole range, like looking for that. And St. Louis definitely has it. Which was funny because we drove from California to here, and originally I forget the exact day, but I realized that like how I had planned my drive, Halsey was going to be here the day before we were going to arrive. So those last 3 days, we just drove so much because I was like, we have to get to St. Louis for Halsey. So I bought the tickets, and then we were just flying through Kansas and Missouri at the end. And we actually ended up getting here the night before, and we were able to make it out. And it was amazing because we go out to this concert, you see all sorts of people and all sorts of different fashion, and I did not have that in Santa Barbara County. It's a much more homogenous as far as like fashion goes and things like that. And, kind of, we called it like Valley Chic in the area where I live.
Where was the show?
It was at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I took my daughter out to that.
FYI, that's Riverport.
Riverport.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, for me, it's so close.
If you call it Riverport, you'll instant cred.
Riverport. Okay.
Yeah.
So and again, I'm like, wow, we just went out to this huge concert that was 20 minutes away. When we lived in California, that was 3 hours away, right? To
Yeah.
go to anything.
Sure.
And so we had that. And then like a couple weeks later, I'm going to see my favorite ska punk band, Less Than Jake, over at the Pageant, which is again
Yeah.
like 7 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
And it's just been constant
And
with
you landed in U City.
and I landed in U City.
Yeah.
I basically asked Anthony, where can I go to some good punk shows and have Asian grocery stores?
You really were like, where'd Nelly grow up?
I didn't ask. I didn't know that. So new thing. But yeah, I mean, having lived overseas, I was like, I need my South Asian grocery store. I need Korean stuff, Vietnamese
Amen.
stuff. And so we've got all that right there.
Okay, so I love this part of it because it's one of the things, when I do talk to people that are like, hey, checking out the show, Anthony, seems cool. I'm like, wait till you meet him.
Yeah.
But we talk about a lot like Acclimate and what he does. Let's do a quick PSA because what you just described is really what you do
Yeah.
and what you focus on. Can you take a second and talk about how important it is as you interviewed for jobs and you looked at other markets to be able to sit down with an individual or connect with a guy like Anthony who asks the questions that matter to you as not an employee but a citizen of a town? Can you talk about that process in finding your your hobbies, your interests, and what that meant to you in landing where you did?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was great because we started with a call before I came to do the visit, so we could make the best use of the time.
Yeah.
And it was cool because he's asking all about, well, what do you like to do on the weekends, and what kind of food do you like to eat, and groceries, and what do your kids like to do, and and I ended up then with this huge list of different music venues and places to eat and dance studios for my daughter. And I kind of wasn't, she's an artist, and I wasn't sure when we moved here, would she want to get into theater, visual art, dance? So I was like, just show me all the things, right? So have this huge list of different places.
Yeah.
And then when we came for the day, we were driving around kind of like hitting all of these major places and then also looking at different neighborhoods and thinking about like what
Long
the lifestyle
day.
would be. Yeah. Yeah, I had so many interests. Maybe it was a longer day than usual.
No, it was amazing. Yeah.
So you the one thing that I'd like you to expand a little bit on your own experience. You talked about the supermarkets, the Asian food stores that you were wanting. It's funny because I don't know what it was. It was an Instagram reel where somebody said, can you take me to your Asian grocer? And they go to Walmart to the aisle that says Asian.
Oh God, no! Who did
That's
that?
so sad.
I it's like because the vast majority of people, when they think of certain cities, and there are a lot of cities that are new and hot and popping, right, according to magazines. But when you do ask them specifically for, I need this type of experience, or I'm looking for this type of store. When you did get here, and Anthony's like, hey, well, here's a neighborhood, and right up the road here, there's these places. Given your global travels, were you surprised by the authenticity of the area?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, when I was in California, I would drive 45 minutes away to Santa Barbara to go to like one tiny little grocery store with like 4 aisles, right? And just to get, wonton wrappers and a couple basic things that I couldn't get, in my tiny town of 1,000. And then I come here and I went to Olive supermarket.
Yeah, Olive supermarket,
is gigantic. And even in Asia, like you don't often have a grocery store that is that big.
Yeah.
And then it has stuff from so many countries. So you have like your Filipino stuff, your Thai stuff, your Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, and you're just going through the store.
Yeah.
And my daughter and I were just like, and this, and this. And we came home with like 17 kinds of noodles. And I was like, it's 2 minutes away. We don't need to actually buy all of this at
We don't
once.
have to do this anymore.
And then when we discovered they had like the frozen section for the hot pot, we just bought a hot pot and we were like, we're living the life.
Oh my God, how cool. Oh God.
So
cool.
So rock and roll. You're a Massachusetts kid, right?
Yep.
So mighty Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Right. When have you explored more of outside of ska punk, looking at the venues, kind of the concert calendars? Is there anything maybe jumping out at you that you're like you didn't expect? Whether it's volume of venues, the variation in genres, the routing. What's your kind of take on the music scene from somebody that likes to go to live shows.
Yeah, there's honestly just too much to do. Like I put so many things in my calendar, and all different kinds of genres, different places, different festivals, and because I've been redoing my basement to make it into a jam space, so that kind of has taken a lot of my time. I also am a chauffeur,
which is magnificent.
Of a seventh
by the way,
grade girl.
I saw it.
It has a stage.
Yeah, it
so I
has
kind
a
of have
stage.
my own performance space now. But I'm the chauffeur of a 7th grade girl, so there's not that much time to actually get out to things. So what I'm surprised about is just like the variety, the volume, like so many different venues. I mean, I just have this list of places I still want to get to, And I see something on Facebook, I just pop it into my calendar, and then I'm like, oh, this weekend there's these 3 things happening. Like I can't go to them all.
So have you found kind of the venues other than Riverport or St. Louis Music Park or out that way? Have you found some other
honestly, I keep going back to the pageant because it's so close to me, and it's like perfect size.
Yeah,
I've gone there for some stand-up comedy as well as different shows. I was just there to see Goldfinger, one of my favorite ska punk bands, a couple weeks ago, and honestly, because I've lived overseas for 15 years, there is not an active ska punk scene in Mumbai, for example. And so I've really missed the energy of that. And I had never seen Goldfinger because they're a West Coast band. I'm from the East Coast. And I was crying, I was like, it was sold out. There's all these people screaming.
Well, Moon, Moon Valjean in the band.
Yeah.
He's a St. Louis guy.
Yeah.
He's radio voice on The Point, and
amazing.
He's a Manchester United fan, so we don't talk about him much. But yeah, it's one of those things. Like I think Anthony, you probably will attest to this as well. You know how earlier we were talking about why we are an exporter of kids. I think kids probably have had it too easy, and they don't understand kind of the value in the ease. Those of us that have been here for a while, that have always been going to these venues, we do take it for granted.
Yeah.
Because we have like per capita, and I saw this article maybe about a year ago. The city of St. Louis, the St. Louis metropolitan area, sells more tickets to music events than Cook County, Chicago.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it though.
Is it 300 live shows? Is it a month or something? Or a week? It's some outrageous number.
Yeah. So if, as you maybe take it down a notch away from, because the pageant is 1,800 cap, 2,000 cap, whatever.
2,000.
Del Mar Hall's right next door, which is right around 800, 900. But then there's a lot of the baby venues like the Duck Room, and I love Rock House down on
Old Rock House
down by the Four Hands. What about kind of like just the neighborhood scenes, just in general? Not necessarily music, but you're in U City. You're really close to, obviously, the Central End. West End isn't that far away. I'm sure you've heard of Tower Grove Park. Are you bouncing around and exploring kind of these mini fiefdoms within the city? And what's your initial take on the neighborhood scene?
Yeah, I think it's neat because each has its own personality, and that was why it was really hard to decide where to live, because they all
could have seen you a few places for sure.
We had a list and it was like 10 different neighborhoods,
all over South City, and then but glad you came up North Side.
Yeah,
with us.
And I think it would have been a really interesting lifestyle, in any of those places. So so my daughter and I love to go out and go thrifting. So we'll go out to different neighborhoods, like walkable neighborhoods, and when we go to the Loop a lot, obviously, which is right there, just go around.
She like Avalon? What does she like? Does she or does she just like?
The Goodwill on Olive is actually
isn't it awesome?
Because they have new stuff every day.
Yeah.
Every time we drive by,
the
she's like,
Goodwills
"Can we
are
stop
such
again?"
a thing. Yeah.
And so that's been amazing, and I've just really tried to teach my kids sustainability with clothing.
So Found by the Pound. Have you been there yet?
Not yet.
Okay,
so you guys got to send me a list. More spicy.
Yeah, Found by the Pound is really unique. It's
I'm
cool.
slipping.
It's a thrift joint, but basically it is what it sounds like. You go in there, you got a bag, and it's ready, and they have days where you load it up, and
oh my gosh, she would go crazy,
and you pay by the pound. And it's funny that you're like the 5th person in the last 30 days that has brought up our thrift scene.
Yeah.
and it's funny. Well, over the holidays, I was in part of our trip. We went to Milan, and as we were walking around the perimeter, we got into the parts of town that are away from the fashion center, that are the resale shops.
Yeah.
And such a shift in vibe, because you had these cool people walking around, and they can't afford the $1,200 Dolce, right, or whatever, but it's a vibe. Are you sensing that the longer you're here, when you start to combine the ethnic food markets, when you combine the variation in shows and genres, and thrifting and all of this, is the cultural reality of this city surprising you, above and beyond your research?
Oh yeah. Again, it's just like I'm constantly finding new things, and finding like the depth to them. Right. I just headed over. I saw something on Instagram for punk rock art show, and went over to 31 Art Gallery in South City area with Jared Minnick is the owner, so shout out. And he had some of his like amazing art there, all these guitars, everything. And it was so cool because immediately they're like, oh, by the way, if you don't have anything to do on Christmas, we do this like, regifted like art exchange. And, like there's just, it's not just a place, but a community. And that's just one example of like finding that kind of thing. And I did not have any bad art to give away, but I'm going to try to get something for next year because it looked really cool. And I think the more I go around and see that, I actually ended up going thrifting on Christmas because I like to get out of the house, and there was a shop that was open. I went over there, found all these cool vintage rings. And what I loved about it is it wasn't just what was on display. They're like, oh, by the way, we have more in the back that like we haven't even looked at. Like let's go through it together. And it's cool. It's relational. To me, it reminds me a lot more of like a market culture where I've lived in Asia, where you don't just go to shop, you go to have tea and like hang out and talk to people. And I'm finding that sense of like warmth and belonging, with like just trying to shop.
As part of the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thrifting, outdoors, the schools. I wanted to ask, you mentioned something about, you brought something up a couple of weeks ago, that you were part of a dating circuit, a dating event, and that it was a lot of men that were there. And so I was like, why don't we promote that too? Like we have in so many other cities, like there's no, like there, it's all, any kind of dating event is so many women in which you hear about. But in St. Louis, we've got a lot of single men who want relationships, who want to get married, and who want to, who want to date, which is not the same in some of the other markets. So I thought that was a really fascinating angle and observation, which is I don't know what has that life been like in St. Louis?
Yeah, it's super interesting because I will say, so I'm a single mom. I got divorced, I think about 12 years ago. And so have been, meeting people all over the world and kind of, I think you can see a theme here. My friends and I would kind of rate our dating app interactions and such in different countries and cities and try to think like, where's the best place to be as a single, educated woman?
You would not think St. Louis.
And, so someone would go to Singapore for the weekend and be like, give us your intel, right?
Yeah.
So something that's kind of, I'm always thinking of not just from like a personal perspective, but also from that like cultural anthropology perspective, right? Of
Same.
like, what is the scene like?
Same. Fascinated.
And so, I've gone to a few of these kind of speed dating events in California. It would always be 2 or 3 women to like 1 man.
Yeah.
And so you go there, you're like, well, maybe I'll meet a new friend.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll get a date out of this, but
literally. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, that was kind of what the scene was. And so I was here in the summer and popped up, Jigsaw, speed dating event. And I'm a big extrovert, if you can't tell already from this podcast. So I thought, cool, let's just go out, let's just see what the scene is like. And I show up and there's double the amount of men as women. And I was like, maybe they're
were you immediately texting your friends and said,
like,
score?
Like, move St. Louis.
Score. Yes. Yes. Like tall, Midwest single men with jobs who want to be in relationships.
Yeah, and it was funny because I had done this thing, I called it like 100 Guys on Tinder in California.
Yeah.
Where I analyzed 100 profiles and kind of knocked out, like 93% of them based on things that they said in their profiles. Most of them, it was like 50% were like, I'm not sure what I want.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're 45.
Yeah.
And
you still
like,
don't
what
know.
are we doing? Or, just all these different things. It was kind of like, well, there's really kind of no one left, right, in this population. And that was actually part of my saying, maybe we need to leave California.
You're not alone. We had somebody else, this was many years ago, but came to St. Louis from Los Angeles. And one of the reasons she said was actually to date.
Right.
And so people would looked at her askance going, you left New York and LA thinking that would be the prime area to be dating and to meet somebody.
But those
and she
cultures
goes,
are almost like post-monogamous.
yes,
as well,
they are. That's what she said. She
once
said they're
you
all
start chatting. No one actually wants a relationship with one person.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, the good part about St. Louis, still dating all their high school people, or getting married to the first girl they kiss. There's an angle here. We need to reposition this. So anyway, that was a very, really, I thought a very brilliant and interesting observation.
So we let off the show here, and we've kind of run up on time here. We got to get you back into your real world as well. We let off earlier talking about Anthony's article, in the cover is St. Louis grade D, kind of like from a health inspection standpoint. And there was a significant amount of substance that warranted kind of that awareness. After our conversation and just kind of thinking about your own experience, when you think about your path and again, your experience, how would you grade it? Comparing and contrasting, Anthony's piece in, hey, we're not getting it, we're missing it, we're at a D. Where's your grade on a scale based on your experience?
Oh man, it's really hard to ask a teacher to give a grade, especially now that we moved past that. Now it's all
we don't
now
do
it's
that.
all narrative. Yes. We talk about your strengths and your areas to improve.
Okay, how about this? Green, yellow, or red? Can we go with the colors to make everybody happy?
I mean, because I was looking for a place for me, right, for the things that I wanted, dating, being able to date was one of the factors in there, right? That the outdoors, the music scene, the music, access to different cultures and people from all around the world. Yeah. It's like St. Louis has so many of these features, right? And then as a larger, multicultural city, international city. But without the traffic, without the air pollution such that you have to cancel school,
Wow.
Which is what we would have to do.
We don't think about that.
Mumbai or Seoul, right? Yeah. And so, like for me personally, it's an A because I'm getting all the things that I want in a city. I'm also able to buy a home, as a single mom, which I was not doing that in California, So for me, it's ticked the boxes, right, of like what I'm looking for. And then those things that I don't like about larger cities, whether that be pollution or trash or, just traffic, 2 hours to get anywhere to do anything, spending 45 minutes trying to park the car. Like that doesn't happen here, And so like it's allowing me to have that lifestyle that I want. So when I see that like other people would grade it a D, I'm like, what is the discrepancy? Like what are we not telling about St. Louis?
Well, they don't grade it a D once they're here.
Yeah.
It's just from where they are.
Except for those of us that are from here.
Except the locals. Yes, of course. Yes, of course the locals. But yeah. Transplants get it.
I love it. Well, this has been a real pleasure. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Did you enjoy yourself?
Absolutely.
On a Friday morning. I'm gonna roll us out of here with a little punk rock, alt rock from the Urge, St. Louis's own. You would remember these guys too, right? Heather, this has been a lot of fun. We'd love to have you back. Kind of updates because the longer you're here, you will become more cynical. And I would suggest
There's no zeal like the zeal of the convert. You never know.
I would
The honeymoon period.
No, they end up becoming the biggest advocates ever. So.
And let's figure out how to license this rubric that you put together. I think there's $1 million idea there.
I don't know. I usually just share it with my friends for free, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. We got to stop that. That's so not a St. Louis thing to do, okay?
Where is a good place to follow you?
Oh, okay. Well, I am on Instagram. My handle is still expat Heather, I guess, because
Love
I
it.
feel that I'm a foreigner still.
I'm a fan.
So EXPAT Heather, and you can find me there.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us. This has been a real pleasure. For those of you listening, thank you for doing so. Give Heather a follow. She'll keep you posted on what the outsiders are doing now that she's an insider. And Anthony, well done today.
Expat Heather, thank you. And the Whitfield School, thank you.
Yes,
And,
yes.
Thank you for the great conversation, for being here.
We're on our way out. Like I said, The Urge going to roll us out. Have a great day, whatever the day of the week you're listening to this. Like, review, follow, share. We appreciate it. Till next time.